Hey folks, Steve here with a little bit of a low-key, um, video. Still got more Fall of the Third Reich coming, but I wanted to do a video that I would have called a fireside chat, but I don't have a fireplace, so we'll call it a monitor side chat here at the end of February 2021. And it's crazy to think that we're 2 months past into 2021 already. Time's flying in some ways, but I guess in other ways it's a slow crawl. Still dealing with COVID conditions and just everything else going on in the world. But I wanted to take some time and I wanted to do one of these for a while. Just a easygoing, shorter video, kind of talking about some things going on in my gaming sphere, kind of talk about some things that I'm excited for coming down the road, and some thoughts on various things. So, maybe this video is best enjoyed, when you're kicking back and relaxing and or in an easygoing mode, because that's the mode I'm trying to treat this video on my end, just relaxing. As you might see from the channel, still working through Fall of the Third Reich, and I'm going to be recording Turn 3 probably shortly after I'm done recording this video. And so far, so good. I mean, I think we're doing okay. I think, if you watch those videos, I'm a little frustrated by some of the map terrain differentiation and how clear things are, but besides that, the game's going well, and I'm having a good time with it. When I look at the ratings here, on Board Game Geek, this is listed as a 7.7, and I think right now, to me, I'm kind of in that frame. This isn't a groundbreaking, amazing game. It's not a bad game either, and I think it's filling its role as being sort of this Axis on the back foot game. And the one thing what I find really interesting, since I've been doing videos on this game, is that there are a lot of folks in the comments, not a lot, but I mean, a handful of people who have spoken up saying, I remember playing this game in the 80s, and me having to explain, and I can understand the confusion. This game is not, in fact, related to Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, a game that was from the 80s. It is not a totally different design, does not take anything from that game at all, really. It is totally independent of that game. And of course, for anyone watching, I'll bring this up in my review for the game when I get to it for Fall of the Third Reich. But Rise and Fall of the Third Reich became eventually a world at war, which I have very strong feelings about, somewhat in a negative way. But, that's a whole other video, right? And I've done that video. I don't need to retread that land. But yeah, so I mean, we're working through it. And the one thing I think is interesting is okay, you have that, and then out on the forums out here, you see a lot of people talking about, if I look at all the forum posts, a lot of people talking about other scenarios, they want a 1939 to 43 scenario. They want the 1944 scenario. Why isn't there a 1944 scenario? I think there's a thread in here about that. Or why aren't there more scenarios in general? And one thing for sure I would say, just based on my playing of it, I don't think the game system as designed would fit a 39 to 42, 43 game, mostly because you don't have North Africa, period. And there really wouldn't be, the rules are designed expecting the Axis to sort of be on the back foot. The way that supply and command and all of that works, I just don't think a 39 to 42 game would function in the game system as designed, just the way it's set up. You'd have to change so much, at which point, okay, go play Unconditional Surrender, go play A World in Flames or Totaler Krieg. This game really is intended to be that Fall of the Third Reich, that's what it says on the tin, right? I think trying to fit too much into the scope of the game would just cause more problems than it would fix. But I do think the idea of a 44 scenario has merit. And supposedly, Ted was working on a 44 scenario, but it hasn't manifested. I don't think, unless I've missed something. They were. I think I saw some comment mention maybe it was going to be in a Paper Wars issue, and Paper Wars is the Compass Games sort of war game magazine that they have. But I've not seen it, and I have a fair number of Paper Wars issues. For whatever reason, I've just purchased a lot of those, more than Strategy and Tactics. Maybe almost as many C3I issues as I have. I don't know. But when I look at, like, here's the next issue coming out for Paper Wars. Issue 97 is going to come out in March, so next month or this coming month. And they do have, if you look at the contents, there is this article right here that says Downfall, Design and Play of the Fall of the Third Reich. It'll be on page 52, tentatively. Now, it doesn't say who is going to write this article, if this is coming from Ted or a developer or someone else. It does have an article on Fatal Alliances, which is going to be cool. I'm going to really like reading that. So I'm ordering this issue for a variety of reasons. There's more than one, that's for sure. But I like the content, and they always come with a game, and it's got a World War I game. So I kind of feel the need to get it. So I'm getting it. But it doesn't, like, if I just read that, again, like, design and play, so it's like commentary on the game, which will be interesting to read for sure, but it isn't being labeled as a 1944 scenario. So if there is going to be a 1944 scenario released for the game in Paper Wars, it has not yet come to pass, and it doesn't appear that it's been released so far. For better or for worse. So, you know, I guess we'll see. I mean, you know, I don't know what else to do there. And there's other stuff on here, like, you know, Pontiac's War 1763 to 66. I'm not sure if that's referencing a scenario for End of Empire, which is another Compass Games game that I have, and I think is pretty cool, though I've not talked a whole lot about it on the channel. So, you know, with Fall of the Third Reich, like, yeah, I think as is, like, the shorter scenarios, how much more can you cut the game down before there's not much of a game, right? 12 turns seems like a lot, but the turns go pretty quick if I'm not commentating while recording the video, right? Like, if I wasn't doing the video series, I could knock out a turn pretty fast, I think. So if you cut it down to, like, okay, a 6-turn scenario, well, you know, that's not a very long game at all, I would bet. So, I don't know. I think it would be cool to have a 1944 scenario, but you're going to get a lot of big events over with, I think, right? Like, you'd have to start it with the Allies doing D-Day. Because if you skip past D-Day, and you did like a September 44 or something, like, most of the big action of the game has kind of already come to pass, right? If you skip the landings in France, and you just have the Allies set up in France, and Italy's over with, and the Soviets are in, you know, are reaching out of the USSR into the rest of Eastern Europe, like, you know, what, I guess it's the last stages of the game, sure, but, you know, it feels really truncated, probably, from that perspective. I'd certainly give a 44 scenario a try. I probably wouldn't record it, but if it comes out, I mean, I'd be willing to try it. I mean, I do have A Mighty Endeavor from Multiman Publishing, and I got that recently, and it's really a D-Day to the end of the war game, and I have the expanded edition, which has the East Front added, which has, like, Poland and Eastern Germany being invaded by the Soviets. But I've not played that yet. And it's going to be a relatively high-level game. And I guess there's, like, for me, there is sort of a thing, like, this game and Mighty Endeavor might have some overlap. You know, is it worth having both games? And I don't know. I mean, I think the fact that this game has the invasion of Sicily and dealings in Italy is cool. And feels like a worthwhile inclusion, as you can see in my video series, like, hey, we're trying to invade Sicily. That is its own little microcosm of the war going on right there. So I don't know. Probably worth having both games at this point. I've not reached a stage in my game buying where I'm, like, pruning. I don't prune. I'm not a pruner right now. My games just keep accruing, and it's going to start to become a storage issue, so maybe I'll need to prune at some point. But, you know, I could do a whole video on what games could be pruned and why, but I don't feel the need to do that yet. Okay, so yeah, I mean, so I'm playing through Fall of the Third Reich. We're going to keep that going until completion. I'll do a review video, and then we'll move on to something else. I'm not entirely sure what that will be. Maybe we'll do a Spin the Wheel of Destiny like we did before, and get something. And I guess the timing of this will really matter. Like, if I finish Fall of the Third Reich, and by the time I finish, I get my copy of The Dark Summer by Ted Racer, published by GMT, which covers the D-Day landings at an operational level. I might jump right into that, just because I'm pretty into the Dark series at this point. So The Dark Summer would be a fun one to get to the table. But if not, then I'd maybe play something else. Now, while the videos on Fall of the Third Reich have been slow to come out because of life being super busy, I have gotten a game a little bit with my wife, and that's mostly on the weekends. We get a few spare hours where we can just hang out, she and I, and we can play a game while the kiddo's sleeping or napping or whatever. And we've played a couple of things. We did play Europe in Turmoil a couple of times. This was a game that I did a video review of a long while back when it first came out. And you can see my rating is a 10. Do I still stand by that 10? Well, yeah, I guess so. I think it's a really compelling game. And I might like it more than Twilight Struggle, really. I think I'm kind of there, where the theme and the differences I like to the formula of Twilight Struggle. So we played this some more. And it ended up getting my wife into a mood to watch Downton Abbey, because it's rather at the same time frame, which was funny. She enjoys this game. I enjoy this game. So we got a few extra plays of this. We've played it a number of times. We played this quite a bit, and it's still fun to play. Sometimes I wonder if it might be authoritarian leaning in terms of balance. But I sort of get how to make use of the authoritarian faction better than the liberal faction. This might just come down to understanding how to make headway in certain areas, like Russia. But I've won as both sides. Both of us have won as both sides. So I don't know. I'm probably just rambling on that. So I don't know. I'm not sure what the true balance of the game is, but we've had fun playing it every time. It's a very enjoyable game. Just like Twilight Struggle is a very enjoyable game. We still play that and like that. So this was fun. We played this a few times in the last couple of months. One game that I got to the table that I've owned for a while, and I never got the guts to put it up, was War of the Ring. Second edition, that's the one I have. I've had it for a long time. I even bought expansions for it and had never played it. We just never got around to it. And we finally, over the new year through now, have played this 5 or 6 times. And I really like it. And I don't know if I'm going to do a review video or not for it. I might. But spoilers for that review, I really like this game. It's very fun. Now I like Lord of the Rings and all of that, and so that's sort of a treat. But I think this sits alongside Star Wars Rebellion as just a very good thematic licensed game, and so much about it just fits so perfectly into the feeling of the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the War of the Ring and all that stuff. It just is really enjoyable. And I've won as both sides, and I think, I don't know, it's just a very cool game. And the one thing I'll say, as sort of a knock on it, is and of course I'm going to look at these pictures, and they're all going to be of these awesome things that people have put together because they tricked out their game. But this is really more of how we played it, which is these just very garish blue and green figures, and the good guys are blue, the bad guys are red, but there's multiple factions within the sides, and you can only tell the difference if you're really looking at the plastic mini. And of course, I got pretty good. I could just look at a figure and say, oh, that's Rohan, oh, that's Gondor. I can tell right away. I'm looking at the shield, I'm looking at the symbols. But just having the singular color just makes it hard to tell and differentiate. And so we played the game enough that I sort of got trapped into a lot of what people do with this game. Is I've started prepping to paint my minis. I got some gray spray primer, and for a special occasion, my wife got me a basic paint kit for minis, and I'm going to paint my figures, I think. I'm not exactly sure to the extent that I'm going to go doing that, but I'm going to probably give it a try at some point. slowly over time, because it takes a while to do that, and I don't have a lot of free time. And I've played tabletop role-playing games. I have tons of minis over the years, and I've never painted them because I've just not been a painter guy. Like, I don't play miniature war games. I only play cardboard board games, war games. I don't do minis. I probably won't do minis beyond painting the figures for this game and its expansions and other games that are much like it, just because to me it's just too much of a time sink. But for this game, how good it is and how much I like Lord of the Rings and just what the game is doing, like, I do kind of want to paint my figures. Maybe I'll get them as good as this. I don't know that I'm going to be able to paint as well. I'm not going to do that base cleanup that they did, like with adding rocks and trees. Like, that's super cool. I don't have the patience for that. But I would like to try to do some basic painting so that they look nice and they look distinctive on the map and are easier to sort and work with. But really enjoyed War of the Ring. It is very cool game, very cool. And I'm going to add in the expansions and try out other stuff at some point. It's just a very cool game. I don't think I'm adding much to the conversation, like, in the industry, because I think a lot of people in the hobby already like War of the Ring, and they should. It's a very cool game. I even have the Battle of Five Armies game and the Hunt for the Ring game, which are sort of like companion games to this, but I've not played those yet, so I need to get to those. But it's been a lot of fun playing this one for sure, and my wife likes playing it well enough, so it's like a win-win there for sure. Very cool. Another game that we played just recently, and I kind of feel bad because I know people on the channel, people who view this channel, were hoping to maybe see some of it at some point, and maybe I won't based on what has occurred, or I will, I don't know, is I got to play When Eagles Fight, which is one of the games in this 1914 Glory's End When Eagles Fight dual pack from GMT that had come out a few years back. And, you know, it's Ted Racer games. It's like, God, I talk about nothing but Ted Racer games on this channel the last long while, because they're just all so good, and a lot of them are World War I games, and, you know, like, I'm a World War I guy. I think I'm more interested in World War I than I am World War II in a lot of ways. It's tight, but it kind of goes that way. I just think World War I is really interesting in terms of all the transition, societal, military, technology, the whole thing. Very interesting transition time period. And we played When Eagles Fight because I figured that one would be kind of more interesting to play, and my wife usually doesn't play Hex Encounter games, so it was like I convinced her, okay, let's do this one. And if you're unfamiliar with it, you know, of the two games in here, 1914 Glory's End is Western Front. If you watch my 1918-1919 Storm in the West series, 1914 Glory's End is basically the equivalent of that game, except in 1914 at the opening phases of the war. So I'm looking forward to playing it. We just did not do that. We instead went with the When Eagles Fight, where, like, 1914 Glory's End covers the first few months of World War I. When Eagles Fight really covers from 1914 to 1917 on the Eastern Front at a bigger, more inclusive scale. So if I look at some of these pictures that folks have taken, you can see, like, you're really covering the main, you know, basically the whole East Front. That is Germany versus Russia. So the Balkans really aren't included. Romania is in it just a slight tiny bit. You can see some of the pictures there, but we played this. I played the Germans. She played the Russians, and I won as the Germans. I kind of expected that might happen just because she's not as used to Hex Encounter games, but it was a good opportunity to try out the game and see how it went, and I liked it. I did like it. Now, Ardwolf did a great playthrough series on his channel, and I would recommend that if folks are interested in seeing that in action, you go watch Ardwolf's videos. Because I think they do a good job of showing the game. I could do a video series on it, sure, playing solitaire. I don't think I would, I don't think you would get much more out of those videos more than you would get watching Ardwolf's videos, so I think maybe he has it covered. I could do a review for it, but I've only played it once, so it's kind of like, do I feel comfortable enough doing a review? I do like it, though. I liked it. I mean, if you want this isn't a review video, but if you want a quick review, like I did enjoy it. It was, it's fun. It is. I think the Eastern Front of World War One is interesting because it is more mobile than a lot of the other fronts of World War One, and the sort of situation of different, the country borders and Russian Poland and all of that. It kind of makes for an interesting play experience. So yeah, I mean, worth playing for sure. If you can get a copy of this, I think it's worth it. I definitely enjoyed it, but I'm a World War One guy, so take that how you will. I will eventually do 1914 somehow, some way. You can kind of see examples of that here. Folks have uploaded video or pictures rather, and it looks very similar to 1918, 1919. The maps are not the exact same. It's off by like a couple hexes. I think it's just different, slightly different scale to the 1918, 1919. But still a cool game. I expect. I bet it'll play a lot like 1918 in a lot of ways. So that's kind of what I've been up to besides Fall of the Third Reich. So just because I'm not making videos doesn't mean I'm not gaming in some capacity. It's just a little more localized and offline, not on Vassal or anything with my wife, and that's it. Just doing what I can there. So. There's a few other things I think I wanted to bring up just for fun, right? I realize this video is already 20 minutes long. I said it would be shorter, try to get through it here. But the last couple of months have been really great, I think, in terms of like looking ahead to the future for some gaming. Games that are going to be on their way that I'm excited for, that I'm like really looking forward to, and I would love to do some stuff for, these games on the channel when it can happen. And what I think is really great, Compass Games is doing this, GMT Games is doing this, there are other companies as well potentially that are going back and doing reprints or new editions of like classic masterpiece type of games that have existed in the past. And a long time ago, I think I did a video, this was a long time ago, talking about like, okay, what new games come out that replace old games. And I realized it was sort of a controversial statement, right? You say, well, what's wrong with the old games? Well, if the old games never get printed again, no matter how good a condition people keep them in, new gamers are going to have less opportunities to play those games. It's going to be a lot harder for people to relate a game experience to a game that is simply not available. And so GMT and Compass Games, Compass is doing like signature deluxe editions or signature designer editions of games. GMT is now doing some reprints of some pretty well-known games that have been out of print for a while, and I'm going to talk about a couple of them. The first is Pacific War. This is Mark Herman's game on the Pacific War that is not Empire of the Sun. So most people these days are familiar with Empire of the Sun, a card-driven game, strategic level. But Mark had done this game back in the 80s when he was involved with Victory Games called Pacific War. And the thing that kills me, it's always funny, is to see Mark talk about this game and referencing it as like, this is a big beefy game. Don't buy this unless you want a big beefy game. It is not a quick playing game. And to like have him talk about like, don't buy this game for the strategic level scenario. Like, there is one. You can play the whole war, 41 to 45 with this game as a great big campaign, but he doesn't recommend it, and he's only done it a couple times just to test it out, a little bit. And most people can't manage it. But what I see when I see people talk about this game, they talk about it like, oh, it's this strategic level game. It's a strategic war game. And I think that's not advertising the game correctly. I think it's a mistake to do that. I think you're going to confuse people. And there's a whole bunch to read here, and I'm not going to go through it all, but it is really intended to be an operational game. Like, Mark has said this in a number of places. Like, buy this game, play it for the operational scenarios. Don't buy it for the 41 to 45 game scenario. It's really not intended to do that. I mean, it is, but it isn't. And I guess like what is meant by that is like, okay, World in Flames is a big game, right? You could play World in Flames, the global scenario, for like 2 years, depending on how often you play, a year to 2 years or something, one whole campaign. A lot of effort, right? A lot of effort. You could spend almost the same amount of time just playing this Pacific War because it's that in depth. There's that many counters. It's that in depth. You could spend multiple years just trying to play through the full strategic campaign scenario. You're probably not going to do that unless you're really, really, really dedicated. And if you buy it for that reason, you're sort of making a mistake because it's just, maybe not a mistake, but like you should really understand what you're getting into. I'm getting it because I will never have to buy another operational Pacific War game ever again. Unless I really want to for some specific reason, but this is going to have so many operational scenarios in it that any particular set of operations that you really care about wargaming are going to be included in here in some capacity. So it's like this is the final game on the Pacific War at an operational level. And you can play operational stuff for like Midway, Guadalcanal, Singapore campaign, all that kind of stuff you can just play within the box. There's going to be a lot of content to the game, totally ignoring the strategic level game. So I wish this game was billed as a collection of operational game experiences, because that's really what it is intended to be and what it'll probably work best as, not a strategic level game. And if you want a manageable strategic level game, then you should play Mark Herman's Empire of the Sun, which is a cool game. Now, I really like Mark Herman games, period. So, I play a lot of Ted Racer games, obviously, if you watch the channel, but I also really like Mark Herman games. And so I'm just really stoked to have this. The funny thing is, if I were on camera, I would show you my copy of the original printing of Pacific War. I actually got a copy of the original game that I bought from somebody pre-owned. I don't know for sure that my copy has all the counters. They're not organized in any way that I would know how to use them right, and I've not messed with it. I bought it because I didn't think it was going to get reprinted, and I wanted to give it a go. And so I bought this pre-owned copy from somebody for a very reasonably priced. It was nicely priced for the situation. And then, I swear, a couple months later, it was like, oh, big news, Pacific War is getting reprinted. I was like, all right, well, I'm in for it. I'm going to get the new edition. Because the new map looks nicer, the counters are going to be nicer, the rulebook will be available as a PDF and will be reorganized by GMT, and that'll probably be better than the old rulebook that I have for my old copy. I'll probably keep my old copy around or give it away or something. But I'm very much stoked to have the new version, and it looks like, based on the GMT newsletter, that it could be in our hands somewhere 5 to 9 months. In the newsletter, GMT does the breakdown of the production schedule, and it's like, oh, this is 3 or 4 months out, this is 5 to 9 months out, this is a year or more out, we expect. Well, Pacific War's listed in the 5 to 9 months. So in theory, we could have this game before the end of the year in our hands, and I'm very stoked by that idea. I really would like to, I'd really like to play it, and I'd rather play the new edition than my old edition at this point. I can wait. I'm willing to wait for the new edition to bust it open and try it out, because I think it'll be worthwhile there for that reason. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, knowing that it's coming along. It's going to be published. I keep accidentally opening this picture. It's going to be great. And when you look at the game contents, 4-inch box, right? There's the 1-inch box, there's some 2-inch boxes, you even get the 3-inch boxes, which are pretty big. This sucker is going to be 4 inches wide, deep. That's going to be a big box. 3 roll books. 2 big mounted, they're mounting these maps, so it's gonna, you need the 4-inch box because of all this stuff. 2 regular size maps mounted, a cardboard scenario map, 9 counter sheets, so that's a decent number of counters right there, right? Some replacement record sheets, which it's nice that you're getting a pad, you can always photocopy or print out, whatever. Some display sheets. Just awesome, very cool. I realize that this game isn't necessarily intended for solitaire. There are ways you can do solitaire. I'll still play it solitaire. I think it's going to be a lot of fun just to try it out. And I've got a buddy who's into the Pacific War, and we might give this a go at some point in the future. So very cool, very excited that this is happening. It kind of pales a little bit in comparison to the other announcement that blew my mind with this month's release, which is the Vietnam 1965-1975 reprint, which, as of this video, is 9 orders away from reaching 500. And I knew it would. If I had any doubt that this was going to reach the 500, I'd be doing videos saying, everyone go order this game. So you could kind of see this video as me saying, hey, go order this game anyway, because this was one that, when I researched the game, right, I have plenty of Vietnam games now. Fire in the Lake, Hearts and Minds, a few other ones. Vietnam Rumor of War, which I think might have some problems, and that's from Compass Games. All of these games were sort of like, well, they're games on the Vietnam War to varying degrees. And what the problem was, if you talk to anybody, say, oh, well, Vietnam 1965, 1975, that's the game, the Nick Carp Vietnam game, they would say. It's like, oh, that's the best Vietnam game. That's just, it's all inclusive, and it's in depth, and it takes a really long time to play the whole scenario, but it's got smaller scenarios. It's a great game. But the problem was that, it was out of print. It was printed, back in the 80s or whenever it was. And, they would go for, you're going to buy a pre-owned copy, you're going to hope it's in good shape, and it might be pricey depending on the availability, right? So there's always this, it'd be fun to get it, but I don't know that I'm going to, hunt one down. And there were even comments online I found where it was like, it sounded like Nick Carp wasn't even sure he had the rights to the game, that it could even be reprinted. So it was like, we're going to lose this game, and it felt like it was that way for a long time. Until this announcement was made where they're saying, yeah, we're doing a GMT edition. Now, the price point is very reasonable, right? $60, $60 for the P500 price. And they're doing a new map, and they're going to do new counters, which, I harp on games from the 80s, but I do not think that the component design and color choices of the 80s are very good. They don't age well at all. I really don't like them. Any game that I've had, that I've gotten, that is from the 80s, that didn't have some sort of new addition, it's always rough on the eyes, in my opinion, and I realize that's the taste, but everything here looks much nicer. It reminds you a lot of the Silver Bayonet and Next War counter design. I think that might have to do with the fact that Mitchell Land is helping develop the new edition. The new map is nice. That's a very nice looking map. Doesn't hurt the eyes. And so, this is going to come out. Now, I don't know exactly when we'll see it, but it's going to reach its 500 mark, and, there's already a lot of commentary on it, they're talking about the changes that are going to exist. There's going to be some clarifications and changes, but really not much. You're going to get a 3-inch box, 3 normal-sized maps, so it's going to be a big table layout. It doesn't say mounted. I expect it's not going to be a mounted map game. That's my guess, because of a 3-inch box and 3 maps. I suspect these will be paper maps. Rulebook, playbook, a bunch of player 8 cards, and other things, and 6 sheets of counters. Now, it says low solitaire suitability. That's going to have to do with hidden movement and stuff, which makes it's the same thing with Silver Bayonet. It's really hard to do Silver Bayonet solitaire because you have hidden movement, and it just doesn't work super great for solitaire. But there'll probably be some ways around that I could look at doing if I'm not going to play it, unless I play it opposed. But I suspect it'll have to be solitaire for a while. But I'm very excited for this. It's very cool that they're doing a new edition of this. I don't think it'll mean any other games that I've gotten have been a waste to own them. I might change my opinion after I actually play Vietnam Rumor of War and get irritated by it or something. But I think it's at least worth figuring out. Is this the right game? Is this truly the king of Vietnam strategic games? And if it is, or an all-encompassing game, I guess, for Vietnam, I mean, final word said on the conflict, right? I think the only thing being the game was designed before a lot of other sort of information has come out on the war that has been either declassified or is just more available, more research, better understanding of the conflict. So this new edition might not incorporate all the new learnings we have on the war. So you could say maybe from some perspectives it's not as good, but as what other game is going to compare to it, right? I don't know that there's going to be one that's comparable. So very excited about this. Very much looking forward to it. Like, I'm just super stoked. I was so stoked to see that this was the game hinted at in the GMT newsletter. I didn't even suspect that this was going to happen when they said it was like hinted as a game in Southeast Asia. It's like, oh, that could be anything. I don't know, some game on Singapore. Who knows? But no, it was this. So just great. Looking forward to see what the new box art will look like. Probably won't be this. Just very cool. Very, very much looking forward to it. And I say very cool. I have to keep in mind, like, I have relatives who served in Vietnam, and it was not a great experience. And it's always weird talking about it because, as opposed to World War II or other wars, like, I know people who've been involved in that conflict, and it is not a happy time. So I don't know. I have to check my excitedness a little bit, but I think this is going to be a very good addition. GMT is going to do a really great job with it. Mitchell Land and Ralph Shelton, I think, really like this game. They really care about making this game, this new edition, awesome. And I trust that they're going to do a good job. This is going to be a good game. The final thing I wanted to bring up, and I realize this video is getting long, so if you're getting a little too warm by the fire of your monitor, I understand that if you're getting bored, but one last thing. This is I don't have much to go on, but I'm hoping. One of the other things that GMT Newsletter had was a game involving Hannibal. Now that game turned out to be some other game that I don't care about, and I'm sorry to the designer of that game, who designed Hitler's Reich. I just don't care about those games. There are more games than simulations, and they're so gamified that it kind of takes me out of what we're trying to portray. I'm not into those games. I was hoping it was Thunderbolt. What is Thunderbolt? Trying to figure out the best way to show this picture. It's not great resolution for this. There was a set of games that had come out some years back. Richard Berg being the sort of mind behind it, and Richard Berg has passed away. If you're not familiar with who Richard Berg is, prolific game designer, but he passed away last year, I think it was. He had these two games, Rise of the Roman Republic and Carthage, the First Punic War. They were games in the Ancient World series. Now, I have both of these games, but they're unpunched, and I haven't gotten the guts to set them up and play them, though I'm very much interested in doing so, because I think they're very interesting. The game system is very interesting and intricate, and hex and counter, and it has a lot of those, the design ethos of that is in there, and a lot of chrome and all that good stuff. And there was going to be a third game called Thunderbolt, which was going to be, like, if Carthage was the First Punic War, Thunderbolt was going to be the Second Punic War. Rise of the Roman Republic dealt with things like the Sabines, and you had the Samnites, so like fighting the Samnites and Etruscans and stuff, like very early Roman Republic stuff. Then you had Carthage, which covered the First Punic War. Then you would have the Second Punic War. And then whether or not there was ever going to be any other games in the series was kind of unknown. But Richard Berg died, and we weren't sure if Thunderbolt was going to happen. Well, David Doctor, who's a prolific AAR writer and also a game designer, had created this graphic saying like, oh, well, maybe we'll see Thunderbolt in 2020. And even better is if we got a deluxe package, the whole frickin' enchilada, Berg's Ancient World series in one big-ass box that would make even SPI proud. There's just enough out there on the internet to indicate that this is coming. Like, it is probably going to happen. One is Mark Herman had posted this. I don't know if it's a tweet or what. It says Alan Ray, who's one of the developers, and I are going to fill in this blank for Richard. Stay tuned. Implying that, indeed, they were going to do Thunderbolt. And then there's some other comments out there on like Consim World. I could show you that. I'm not going to bother. You can look that up if you really care. That seem to indicate that indeed they're working on doing they're updating the rules, they're revising and clarifying the rule set, which is mostly the same across the two previous games. You just need there's a system rule set and then there's a specific game rule set, kind of like you would see in like Next War and other series. That you would have Thunderbolt would be developed, but they would just release Thunderbolt as one big game. They wouldn't. It sounded like to me that they wouldn't look at producing Thunderbolt as a separate game. They would just do, I don't know what they would call it, Thunderbolt: The Ancient World. Maybe they just call it the Ancient World Deluxe Compilation. I don't know, but it sounded like the whole freaking enchilada package was maybe in play. That's what they're working on. And it's maybe still a long way off, but it's potentially coming. And I was hoping that GMT's hinted game for Hannibal was going to be Thunderbolt. It was not, but I'm still holding out hope, and I hope it comes to pass. Now I could play these two games on camera, and I could go through it all. I've got a lot of other games that I do want to cover, and this is another one of those situations where, hey, if I know that Thunderbolt in the deluxe package is coming, I might just wait. But could you imagine how, this would be another 4-inch box game that has Rise of the Roman Republic and Carthage and Thunderbolt all together, and you could play all of the early Roman Republic conflicts in that time period in one big mammoth box. I think that would be epic. I would be so into that. Now, I've got other board games that cover this time period. War games, I've got Sword of Rome, which kind of covers this time period. I've got Hannibal and Hamilcar, which is the card-driven game, well-known card-driven game that technically covers the Second Punic War. Hamilcar, which came with the most recent version or publishing of that game, covers the First Punic War. But those are card-driven games, and I like card-driven games. I also like Hex Encounter, and I respect what is good about both formats of game. I really would like to explore this more. And you can see here's this big, thread. This is an AAR that was published about Carthage, and you can see, there's a lot of stuff in this. Let's skip back up to the top. I'm just going to go to the game page, just so you kind of see what this game's all about. It's Hex Encounter for sure, and there's all kinds of there's rules governing the way consular armies can be set up. There's counters for magistrates and all this kind of crazy stuff. It really puts a lot of chrome on the game system, but the map looks cool. I think the map has good art direction. The counters are solid and straightforward, and the color choices there are very good. I just, and this is that's what you see as part of Carthage, right? You get it's sort of cut off over here, but you have North Africa, Tunisia specifically, and then the Italian Peninsula, Sicily, and Corsica and Sardinia. But the Thunderbolt map would extend over here, and you would get some of Spain, is my suspicion. So it would be several big maps in this big enchilada package. I hope we see it. To me, that's the next big anticipated game announcement reprint, would be these two games reprinted with the new game Thunderbolt as one big game. You can buy that, and you have the whole experience. That would be very cool. I would very much look forward to that. And if it never comes to pass, I at least have the first two games in the series that I could cover. But, I think the last year coming into this year has been a good year for games being reprinted or stuff that is maybe left in the past being able to be brought forward. And I suspect some of this stuff for Richard Berg's games are he's passed away, and people that worked with him, like Mark Herman, like Alan Ray, and others, they want to do justice to what Richard was designing before, and they're helping to bring some of these things into existence. Like, there's going to be more Great Battles of History stuff potentially. That's something that Richard Berg and Mark Herman really established. And we're going to see more of that stuff. We're seeing reprints of some of those older Great Battles of History titles. So I think it's just, what is old can be new again, can be exciting, can be cool purchases for people who've played them before and want to get, fresh components. And for people like me who maybe, didn't get to play these games from the 80s, because I only got into the hobby in the last, 6 years or whatever, 7 years, something like that. A chance to play these great games. I'm very stoked. The future of wargaming, to me, seems still pretty good here, right? There's some cool stuff coming out. Really looking forward to it. Mark Herman must be a busy guy, because if Mark Herman's working on Pacific War and he's working on Thunderbolt or whatever else he's got going on, he is a busy guy. And maybe it'll be a while before we see all the fruits of that labor. But yeah, so there you go, guys. That's a 45-minute long monitor side chat for the end of February 2021. I hope this was at least passably enjoyable for you to watch. And we'll get more Fall of the Third Reich action here to come. So we'll see you in that one, guys. Maybe we'll do another one of these videos in a few months and kind of see where things sit with new stuff coming out and stuff to enjoy. Josh, I didn't even bring up, one of the other games is the Third World War, which is being reprinted from Compass Games. That's another one of these, like, classic old games being reprinted, being newly available. That's another one. I mean, the list goes on, right? There's whole kinds of games like that we're hitting a good time period, apparently, where a lot of that is coming to pass. Very cool. All right. Anyway, guys, I'll let you go. Stay tuned for Fall of the Third Reich Turn 3 and other good stuff to come. Take care, guys. Keep gaming.